Okay, so good afternoon. Naresh Lachmandas, and sorry if I sound like I've had too much to drink, but I have a vocal cord issue, so apologize for that. So I'm going to try to talk as loud as possible. So I'm a charter member Thai. I'm one of the council members at SIM San Diego, and also with a partner at Avasan. And basically, the intent of today's dialogue is really talking about how innovation is driving change. So Thai is about the industry entrepreneurs, and it's about a lot of young startup companies that over the years have really driven the transformation that we're dealing with today. If you go back to the the dot-com boom, the Bay Area, that's where this started. So a lot of, and there's a Thai South Coast chapter that's based in San Diego. So I'm a charter member there. And I'm not going to read all the details there, but just want to let you know that's what Thai. Let's go to the next slide. Again, it's about businesses, friendships, mentorships, and entrepreneurs. And that's what we're here for, to help the local community from that perspective and really create a bonding environment to help you guys on that front. So let's go to the next one. So this is actually what I was trying to focus on. The rise of the entrepreneurs and the technology space. If you look back, the disruptions across the years have driven innovation, right? And so you had the Y2K, and then as you built forward, you went from the information age to the digital singularity. And look what COVID did, right? When you get to the the environment, where it made companies rethink how they need to operate and think differently. And that's really what the focus is on. And technology has driven change, but it's impacted people, humans, in lots of different ways. But over time, it gives us time to learn the technology and take us forward. However, as we get into the current state where we are with Gen AI, it's really giving us a little time to catch up. And it's saying, accept it and move forward. Because if you don't embrace it and run with it, you get left behind. So I think that's really the core message as we go forward. Next slide. And that's really, as I'm trying to draw that picture out there. You know, if you go back, it took a little while. People had time to adjust. But as you get closer up to the right side, there's less time for us as humans to adapt, engage, and embrace that technology change. And that's the intent of the dialogue. So again, this is what keeps CTOs up at night. Hence why we're here with, and I'm really would love to maybe hand it over to our panelists, spend a little time, have them introduce themselves, a little about their company, and then we'll take it forward. So I'll start with you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neil Jadhav. I am Chief Digital Officer, which involves CTO, CIO, CISO, all of the roles under one umbrella. For a company called Neology, we are a mobility and transportation company. I also lead their P&L, so I'm the president of their mobility platforms business, which is a separate entity under the parent company. We have been around for a few years as the mobility platforms company, but Neology parent company has been around about 30 years, doing great work in transportation, transit, mobility, law enforcement, and so on. So I'll pass it on to Dave next. Dave?
My name is David Whitaker. I'm the CIO at General Atomics, and we're an aerospace and defense company. We play a lot in the DoD space, and we're also an energy company. So we manufacture UAVs, we work with the Navy, and we also have been involved with recent fusion events that have been successful. More energy out than energy in, which is a phenomenal milestone, and we've been engaged in that. So work with a bunch of really smart people. I like to lean on them for what we do there at GA from an IT perspective, but always something going on there at GA.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Benke. I'm CIO for the city of San Diego. And, San Diego, we have 1.4 million residents, 13,000 employees. I think our proposed budget for next year is somewhere in the neighborhood of $5.8 billion, but many services, public safety, capital improvement projects. We have a water utility, refuse collection, parks, libraries, a digital equity program. So many different business models that we're providing IT services for.
Hi everyone, my name is Etienne. I'm the CIO of Los Angeles. I'm kidding.
Different hat.
Different panel, sorry. I'm the founder of 7 CTOs. We are a peer group organization, care deeply about the emotional intelligence of people who are in the CTO role, especially in the startup phase. So gigantically smaller than what these gentlemen are representing. But I was born and raised in South Africa, moved to San Diego in 2000. My wife and I have 3 young children, and super happy to be with you, Naresh. Thank you.
Thank you, Etienne. And by the way, did you bring the CTO hats for these guys? I think it's important to recognize that technology is key, and most CIOs today are now playing a different role than they were many years ago when I was that type of person. So I just want to point that out. So Etienne, I'm really disappointed to bring us those hats. But again, as we drive innovation, as discussed earlier, it's exponentially changing the dynamics, right? So as we're getting significant benefits from the technology shift, and also there are many risks. The risks are exposure of IP, cybersecurity, all that stuff out there. But again, we cannot stop. We have to keep moving forward. So about 2 weeks ago, at one of Avasant's Parmesan Summit, we had the president of SAP of Microsoft's North America operations. His name was Rodrigo Lima. And he basically, and I'm not quoting him, I'm just referencing what he said because I'm not good at quotes, but basically, as far as Gen AI technologies, either you embrace it, you accept it, leverage it. If not, if you don't, you'll just become part of the menu. You'll just be there as another person that got impacted by it. So point being is, let's take it, run with it, and make it happen. And so again, and one of the things, I'm going to go back to a book that I read many years ago by Jim Collins. And he stated, if you don't change, you will die. So companies that don't embrace change are the ones who are not around anymore, right? And that's really what happened during COVID with the medical industry, the healthcare industry. They were the laggards on the technology space. Guess where they are today? Significant shift. And I think that's where the life change occurring and taking efficiencies, leveraging these technologies to help companies. Not about IT, it's about the business and those objectives. So, Etienne, you talked about coaching young CTOs. What are some things you're seeing out there? Part of this is we want to start with you, so some of these bigger enterprises can learn from you guys as well. So turn it over to you, Etienne.
Well, I think the interesting thing I'm seeing, so we have about 500 companies in 7 CTOs, and most of them have team sizes of less than 300-400 people. So it's really startups at various stages. And I actually find that they are embracing and excited for the experiments with AI. Maybe a little too excited sometimes. I think if I can juxtapose it with Web3 a few years back, where that was a solution desperately in search of a problem, consumers or largely didn't understand blockchain technology, so it wasn't like there was a massive change in behavior back then. So I think we were sort of shielded from the impact of Web3, whereas now, of course, everybody's lives are impacted by what this chat interface does. It's reprogramming people's expectations, and I think for CTOs, that's the hard part, is to stay focused on the one good idea that gave you the product market fit, that is helping you acquire your customers, and not to start seeking, over-engineering solutions for problems that your customer base doesn't actually have. But I do see general excitement. I think it's a very interesting time to explore what data science has given us, what we can inherit from what people have been doing for 2 decades. So I think my point is that there is general excitement at the startup stage.
No, that's very interesting, and I'll share with you the company I work for, Avasant, strategic advisory firm. Our CEO told us we need to jump and leverage the technology. So we worked with Microsoft. We set up Copilot, and we've of course secured the environment, make sure our content and IP is not exposed. We're seeing about 20-25% increase in efficiencies. So I think that's something everybody needs to start to think about, how to take this forward and leverage that.
I think just to say the part that we struggle with the most is ChatGPT emails. when someone's writing you back and obviously it's a ChatGPT email. I asked an engineer recently of a company to describe their SDLC to me, and it was a 5-page email. The guy didn't even bother to edit the sentences. He just kind of copied the whole SDLC email. I think we have those types of issues right now.
No, I think that's really key, is establishing a governance structure. So that really brings us to one of my observations as we've been talking about driving transformation. That's been those 3 dimensions: people, process, technology. But now with the innovation age, we're adding another 4th dimension, and we're going to label it as organizational governance, right? And this is not about PMO, VMO. That's not what I'm talking about here. This is about driving that cultural shift within organizations, all the way from the board, all the way down to the people leveraging the technology. And I think that's key. And I watched an interview about a couple of weeks ago with a retired Admiral, James Stavridis, who was a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, who stated that AI will supercharge the military. And he shared some examples, and one of them was focusing on leveraging the technology to improve logistics, to make effective and timely decisions. He said, if I had that back then when I was on the ground, it would have made us think completely differently. So on that note, Dave, is there anything you can share with us on how you're driving change within the A&D world? But please, no classified information. I'll make sure the audience goes back home without the FBI showing up. So turn it over to you.
Okay, you won't be able to leave if I share some of this stuff, right? Okay. We see a significant amount of our engineering environment really hungry for the AI. So AI is not typically restricted, these GPT and large language models, to the back office, to IT. We're leveraging that in our product, and our engineers are leveraging it in the creation of our products. So for instance, we are leveraging, and we have to be extremely careful from a governance perspective because we're working with IP that is our crown jewels, and we manage IP that is the government's crown jewels. So I got to manage that in my environment, right? I cannot take that and shove that out to the cloud, and now it becomes visible to everybody. So we're running that within our own environment. And one of the examples that we are leveraging AI on is we manufacture UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, right? And they're loaded with all kinds of sensors and everything on it. And when we start those things up, there's a very complex startup procedure that you have to go through. And the engineers have to create those startup procedures. And the data for those startup procedures are in a myriad of documentation that resides in our environment. It's not just one piece of document that you just go grab. And so it generally takes about a week to 10 days for that engineer to complete that startup procedure. We are able to leverage a large language model, internal, and AI, and we can create that document, giving AI visibility to all of our documentation, and we can create that in about 10 minutes, which is really cool. So I've saved a substantial amount of time. What's even better is when we plug that into the UAV and we start executing that startup procedure, if it runs into a step that it fails, it actually troubleshoots it based on the knowledge that it's been able to acquire from all those documentations. So what we've been able to do is we've been able to expedite both the startup and troubleshooting, and the man in the middle still has to be there. We're verifying everything, right? But I can get that done in a much more expedient fashion. Now, we do that as we're testing those vehicles, but you can only imagine how much more that expeditious startup and troubleshoot is in the field of operation, right? When we don't have a whole lot of time to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. When the plane's on the ground, it's not doing its purpose, and we want that plane up in the air as quickly as possible. So that's just one way that we've been able to leverage AI. But again, we have to have those conversations with those engineers and make sure that we're working within certain guardrails so that we don't do something silly and post something out to the broader internet, right? Everybody wants to use AI, but like Etienne said, right, it's like, what's the problem you're trying to solve, right? And we're finding that the most immediate right now is this expeditious manner. If you guys remember, several years ago, RPO was the thing, right? Automate everything, right, with the robots. Now we're able to leverage more than just automation, but applying some logic. Troubleshooting, that's more than RPO, right? So this is the next step to really RPO. And when I get engineers come to me and say, I just need to automate this, okay, maybe that's not an AI thing, right? Maybe something else. But in some of these instances, we're able to leverage AI. We're doing it on the energy side too. Very complex. If you paid any attention to the fusion industry, really what fusion is we're creating a mini sun, right? In here, right? And so we're using high-powered lasers to shoot into very hot plasma. And so there's multiple variables with regards to the intensity of the laser, folding of the laser, and all these variables. And I've got guys that are just plowing through, step by step through these various variables and making tweaks and tunes, where AI can actually go through that and plow through that in a hurry and say, hey, these two variables need to change, right, based on what we're seeing in the further execution. It's a time saver for us in that activity.
So David, that's very interesting. By the way, for some of you younger folks, Dave and myself in our early days driving technology change was saying, let's automate. That's where they learned it from, right? Am I right? Okay. So Jonathan, now you're with the city, and how are you leveraging technologies, a critical infrastructure, and protecting us all? So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, and I think echoing, what these guys said too. We're looking for value. We have city departments also clamoring for AI and many different business models. The city does a lot of work. We have a lot of knowledge workers behind the scenes issuing permits for things. There's creating ordinances, resolutions, managing all of the city's regulatory documents. And so about a year ago, we decided to try a pilot on our intranet where the 13,000 city employees are accessing internal documents. We know they spend a lot of time reading and looking for information in there. We wanted to look for low-hanging fruit. And I always tell my team, show value in whatever we're doing. And this looked like an easy win, but we took Google Gemini, at that time Bard, and Amazon's Claude 3 and Microsoft Azure OpenAI, and put them all three alongside each other, and did a pilot with a chatbot with the top searched pages and documents. And what we found was they all performed pretty well. Some did a little better in on-the-fly language translation, but it really came down to us looking at what is the administrative burden to set these up and maintain them? What's the cost to run them? We thought we could make any three of these work. But we also concluded we really rely on a multi-cloud strategy, and I think we will be working on a multi-AI strategy as well, because we found these tools can do some things better. Each one has its merits. So that pilot went well, and then we decided to also look at language translation for legislative documents. Again, low-hanging fruit, something. We have a service that had done that, and it takes 5 to 7 days to translate languages, say for city council agenda summaries. The problem was they're posted 3 days before the meeting, so they can never get translated. But easy stuff for AI to do, and pretty accurate. And then we also had we lead the San Diego Regional Cyber Lab, and we stood that up about 3 years ago, and we queried some of the smaller government agencies that are part of that regional cyber lab, law enforcement, and said, what are your biggest needs in the cybersecurity world? And most of them came back and said it's a lack of resources, a lack of training access, right, a lack of funding. And so in talking with them, we've stood up training environments, tools that they can come in and do forensics on. But we also stood up a chatbot called MyECISO and soft launched it a couple of weeks ago, and that does stand for Electronic Chief Information Security Officer. And it's certainly not replacing a Chief Information Security Officer, but when you're an under-resourced small entity, what this chatbot does is it does an interview with an organization, and in the course of a half an hour to an hour, however detailed they want to get, it's trained on the NIST cybersecurity framework, and at the end of the interview, it gives them a report card on their cybersecurity posture, gives them grades A, B, C, D, F, and then gives recommendations on how they can make impactful changes. And so, we see that filling a gap. The resources aren't there today for these organizations to do something like that, and they can go through this process. It's no cost, and they can take that report card or report back to their leadership and say, hey, we got D's on everything. We are at high risk. And so we see that filling a gap, really, again, trying to improve the cybersecurity posture for the whole region. But we'll be doing a press release, I think, in the next 2 weeks here. And it'll be open to not only those entities, but we're also saying, hey, small businesses, if you want to use this. So we're really opening it up to the whole region. Even if you want to make your homework network more secure, it does a great job at that. We ran it through training, and it really shined across the board with the scenarios. So again, we think that adds value and addresses a gap that really there wasn't anything there before.
That's very interesting. Hopefully it's not publishing that XYZ failed, right?
Oh, yeah, we had to really work hard on that, right? We said it has to be anonymous. And
I'm going to run a ChatGPT thing on that one. So, Neil, let's turn it over to you. You are working with a startup. That's where you are today, and you came from a large organization. I'd love to hear your insights and how you're operating.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, again, great examples by other panelists. We are working on connecting digital world to the physical world, and what that means is we are creating unique identities for cars or vehicles, all automobiles, and what that would help do is really create mobility payments. So imagine a future where you pull up to the pump and you don't have to search for your wallet because the pump has identified that this car has moved in through either a combination of camera footage or the Bluetooth or certain devices that are on your car that help you identify accurately, and then your mobility payments are connected to that, so you basically start pumping and then get going. Imagine lesser lines at Costco. Think about that future, right? For those who fuel at Costco. But then the other thing that we're doing is for this type of technology to come forward, you really need to do some deep learning on image processing and seeing ALPRs and other things. So that's exactly where we're spending our time. We are training one of the largest databases of license plates in the world, and it performs at high accuracy, at high speed, and it is able to not just capture the digital license plate, but the footprint of the car. What sticker you have on your car? You have a bike rack or not, and so on and so forth. So this is a little bit different than it's computer vision. It's AI on the training models. Yeah.
So my takeaway is, number one, don't mess with this guy, and number two, he didn't tell you that if you're speeding, you'll get a ticket and it'll bill your credit card right away as well. I'm just joking.
Not yet. I don't think our customers will like that. So
it's technology, right? So just taking now, you guys talked about business value. So between the three entities here, how are you looking to drive the cultural change and to drive that governance, that organizational governance structure to enable that change, that innovation, and get the value out of it? So I'll open it up to the panel to jump in. Dave, Jonathan, what do you guys?
We have totally changed track, and we are changing the culture at GA, in particular in both IT and in the business. And the very first question for a lot of the things, since we work with a lot of really smart engineers, they typically come to IT and say, I want you to do this, as opposed to saying, hey, I have this problem, how can we solve this problem? And so we have been able to push back as from a technical knowledge perspective and an expertise perspective and say, what are we trying to solve? And working through that business value equation in those conversations with the business, I think is critical. And historically, we haven't done that. And you know, when we started to roll this out 16 months ago, you know, my IT organization said that's not our culture. Well, you know what? We can change the culture of IT. And then 2 minutes later, they raise their hand and say, you know, that's not the business culture. And it's like, okay, let's affect change in the business culture, but we'll do it from an IT perspective. And so we're starting to ask those questions and realize that we as IT are not just order takers. We as IT are part of the business. We are the business. And so we join as partners. So when we ask the question, what's the business value for what you want? I want a green screen instead of a blue screen, right? Really? What's the business value there? All of a sudden it starts to resonate with our business that that's what we're driving toward, right? So the culture is changing with regards to first, do the right thing from a business value perspective, and then make sure we have the right guardrails around what it is that we're doing. And we're trying to put the right guardrails around AI. We didn't stomp it out, we didn't block it, we didn't say don't use it, but we created the guardrails and say, here's the manner in which you do use it in order to leverage the maximized business value. So that's kind of what we're doing from a GA perspective.
Okay.
For us, cash is king, and cash is really king now that, you know, the leverage is very difficult. And how to preserve that. These AI experimentations can be very costly, so how to run them in a controlled environment so you make sure that you don't spin out of control. And you know, engineers, being one, I'm not criticizing any engineers, I'm one. We love to build shiny things, but those things, if they don't produce business value, and you know, now that I run a P&L, I need to really watch for it and make sure that every single activity, and I have to retrain my engineers to think that way, is that this activity better be revenue producing. If not, then we're running in the wrong direction, solving a problem that doesn't exist. So that's my guidance.
You're a CFO now, just kidding.
Well, yeah, multiple hats.
So Jonathan, you next, and then Etienne, we have we've got a minute or so left, so let's.
Yeah, in the city, you know, one of the things we've really been trying to do, you know, really partnering with, you know, with the business and innovation is you know, find one of the departments that's really hungry, that wants to be innovative, that wants to get out there and take a few risks, and we'll work with them and do something completely new, and the other departments will see that and say, hey, can I do that? Can you work with us on that? So I think sometimes just getting those examples, again, showing the value back to that theme is a way that the other departments, they're very hesitant, or maybe they, you know, have resource or funding issues, they can't do anything, but when they see the value, all of a sudden they maybe find ways to put the resources and funding into place to innovate.
I'll add to that we have a little framework that we use in 7 CTOs to help organizations embrace that cultural change. And if you imagine a triangle, we have novel at the top. We have what David said, guardrails. And then we have this thing called emergence. And emergence is coaching your culture, coaching your company that you don't really know what is going to be produced. And that does create uncertainty. And to be okay with that, to understand that that is simply part of the emergence of this novel system. So novel, guardrails, emergence, been a great tool for us.
Okay, so thank you also again. Hopefully this added value to you guys from understanding how to drive innovation, enable and leverage the technologies and the cultural shift in that space. Thank you to my peers here, and thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.